economics of biofuels. This is the topic of my presentation. As you read there, I'm an assistant professor at Rome University, Faculty of Economics, and I'm a macroeconomist, but I'm becoming more and more involved in energy issues. And this is the first motivation for my choice of this topic. The more substantial motivation is that talking about biofuels is about a lot of interesting things. Technological progress, government subsidies, as you read there, agricultural, energy, transport, and environmental policies, comparative advantages, international trade, protectionism, governance, global governance, green finance, fuel versus food debate, of course not to forget energy security and climate change. So biofuels, in a certain sense, stand at the crossroads of many different and interesting issues. Most of these issues are the issues you are discussing in this very interesting workshop. A brief outline of my presentation, which has started with a very brief discussion of the global growth transport cycle, which is trying to understand where biofuels enter this cycle. We'll then move on to an introductory overview of the industry of biofuels. We shall then discuss the economics of biofuels as such, focusing on cost considerations and international trade considerations, and we will finally conclude by asking ourselves whether, and this is biofuels, whether the cure is worse than the disease. This is a title of a recent paper published under the auspices of the OECD, and it's a very interesting discussion. It contains a very interesting discussion of the pros and cons of biofuels. So, let's start from here. Let's start from what we call the global growth transport cycle. Of course, as we all know, economic growth needs transport services, which facilitate movement of goods and services, improve access to work, education, and of course, production. Now, this creates transport, what the cycle calls transport impacts, in terms of growth in trade rates, motorization, changes in mode share. And these transport impacts produce economic and environmental impacts, in terms of emissions, congestion, pollution, noise. Now, what this picture aims to show is that growth needs transport. Transport creates what we as economists call externalities. Negative externalities, positive externalities as well, but negative externalities is what we're more concerned about. And biofuels can help to make this cycle more environmentally compatible and in some sense, can help this cycle work better. Biofuels. What are biofuels? Are fuels derived from sugar, animal fats, and vegetable oils, which are used mainly as a liquid energy source for cars, trucks, buses, vehicles. This is the essential purpose, essential use of biofuels. And these biofuels, as I was mentioning a moment ago, are regarded as having the potential to address many of the economic and environmental problems posed by the growth transport cycle I was telling you about a second ago. It is interesting to notice that biofuels have been existing for a very long time. The first prototypes of cars in the 1920s were actually designed to work on biofuels. Then, of course, fossil fuel, oil, was much cheaper, and cars and vehicles started to use that kind of fuels. But biofuels have come back and have become competitive again, particularly so since 2003, when the price for a barrel of crude oil started rising above the threshold of $30 US. Of course, now with oil prices being above the $100 US threshold, we can understand that the price competitiveness of biofuels is certainly much, much higher. Global production of biofuels today, or actually 3 years ago, but things have not really changed so much, covered approximately 1% of total road transport fuel consumption. OECD estimates that that percentage can go up by a factor of 20, which means that in 2050, according to some estimates, 20%, as I will be telling you in a while, rather 13–15% of total road transport fuel consumption could be covered, by using biofuels, which means that there is a strong growth potential in this industry. Strong growth potential, which is effectively captured by this graph, which shows how ethanol production changed from 2002 to 2007. As you can see there, that picture conveys two ideas. The first idea is that ethanol production, ethanol being the fundamental biofuel, has been increasing, has been almost doubling over the past 6 years, going from roughly 30 billion litres to 60 billion litres, 30 billion litres in 2002 to 60 billion litres in 2007. The second idea that picture conveys is that biofuels today is essentially an American business. Now it is difficult to read, but the blue and the red column refer to North and South America, and US and Brazil being two fundamental producers of ethanol. This is what the picture tells us. The third rectangle is China, is basically China in Asia, and for Europe, the area is a very tiny one. So, growth and an American business for the time being. Basically the same idea is conveyed by the second picture, which is about biodiesel production. Now, biodiesel is less important in terms of production, is 1/10. 60 billion litres ethanol, 6 billion litres biodiesel. So there's a factor 10, a difference of factor 10. But as you can see there, the trend is certainly a growing one. Why is studying the economics of biofuels interesting? Because studying the economics of biofuels is about studying the linkages between all the sectors in the economy. From the agricultural sector, where we find the cultivators, to the industrial sector, where the processing part and the blending part of the process is carried out, to, of course, the consumption sector, which is where demand enters the picture. What can we say about the structure of the industry? We can highlight 4 parts, 4 essential rings in this chain. The first is, of course, the production of feedstock crops, and here we find competition in a sense, because the production of crops is carried out by hundreds or thousands of farmers across the world. Of course, the size of farms changes depending on the kind of feedstock which is used, but we says that production of feedstock crops is fragmented and substantially competitive. Where we go from competitiveness to something like oligopoly is in the second phase of the production cycle, where biofuel manufacturing takes place. And here we've got that agribusiness multinationals are largely involved at this stage of the production cycle. Ethanol manufacturing is carried out by companies, the ready part of the agricultural industry, be it multinationals or be it smaller companies, while the structure of the biodiesel industry is bipolar, with a few large companies involved in producing biodiesel on an industrial scale, and the other end a large number of very small, locally or farm-remote industry. But as I was showing you a moment ago, biodiesel is for the time being not so relevant as ethanol is. As far as the third stage of the production cycle is concerned, distribution and retail sales, the wholesale distribution is carried out by small and medium-sized companies in some countries and by large, sometimes state-owned oil companies nowadays, like in Brazil. And for retail distribution is guaranteed by the existing network of petrol and diesel fuel